All right, all right. Welcome everybody to Clear Vision Wednesday. I'm Claudia Mühlenweg. I am the creator of the Natural Clear Vision Method. I'm a natural vision improvement teacher based on the Bates method. And this is my live broadcast. So if you are listening for the first time, or if you're watching this later as a recording, just know that this is live, and we will also look at live questions. And today I have a special guest, and we're going to talk about ways to retrain your brain for vision gain. And obviously that rhymes, which I think is really cute. So let me bring on Dr. Irene Cop. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much, Claudia, for having. I almost called you Dr. Claudia because you are like the vision doctor, but the natural improvement
Thank you. No, unfortunately, I do not have a doctor title, which sometimes I'm like, I wish I had one, because it makes, like sometimes it just gives you that extra legitimacy. And obviously you studied long and hard to be a doctor, so it's not just a title. But you are known as the Queen of Shift. And I'm just looking at my notes here. You're trained in acupuncture, neuroplasticity, elite performance psychology, leadership, stress management. So tell us, instead of me reading your bio, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you come to do what you do.
Thank you again so much for having me here, Claudia. And trust me, I actually feel like for most people, it's actually better not to have the doctorate degree, that DR in front of your name, because it enabled you to have, a far more open mindset than most doctors do. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. So I have a long history in what I'll call functional medicine. Functional medicine meaning getting to the root cause, looking at the whole person, and especially the ability to self-heal. And I feel so strongly about our ability to heal ourselves that it's actually in my name of my organization, and why I'm called the Queen of Shift. I could say I'm the CEO of the Success S.H.I.F.T Institute. That's kind of boring. SHIFT stands for self-healing innovations, fast-forwarding transformation. So it's right in the name of my organization, which is why, shows just how strongly I feel about this. So I started my journey. First degree was human biology. And as part of that, I learned how to be a neurophysiological meditation instructor. Now, I am of an age that when I was learning that, the only people who were doing meditation were like yogis and hippies. So this was like brand new. People didn't know what meditation was. And when I say neurophysiological, it was actually, even then, it was learning and teaching others how to control their so-called involuntary nervous system, which really starts in your subconscious brain, and retrain it using things like biofeedback. So biofeedback is just using machines to give you information about your body. Like, so whether it's an ECG telling you what your heart rate is, or, brain waves, EEGs, that kind of thing, so that you could then learn that response of, oh, if I do this, or if I'm feeling this, or if I'm thinking this, this is what happens, so that I can then learn how to control. So that was my first introduction to holistic, holistic medicine. Then I became a doctor of chiropractic. I call it my baptism by fire. It was far harder than anything else I ever did. And again, the whole basis of chiropractic, as with many of the complementary medicines, is to really look at the whole person, and to understand that we have the innate ability to self-heal. From there, I was on this mission even then to be like, how can I help those people? Like, there's so many practitioners do a great job of helping, say this many people. I was always like, what do I need to do to get to this level and help these people, and this level, and this level, and this level, to help as many people as possible? And so the next that I learned was traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, contemporary medical acupuncture. I actually helped instruct other doctors in learning how to do acupuncture. And I love it. And I still use it in the form of acupressure in what I teach nowadays. So rather than doing physical practice, I'm teaching others how to heal themselves truly. And then I kind of hit a roadblock. In fact, actually almost 20 years ago to the date, but give or take a couple of weeks, I crashed and burned. In other words, I had developed adrenal exhaustion. I'm going to explain later what that is, hopefully. And adrenal exhaustion, where I developed a physical condition that I wasn't aware of, and I lost consciousness while driving and drove straight into, for those of you who know Northern Canada, a massive rock face, about a 3-story high rock face in the Canadian Shield, it's called. I broke 10 bones. My 6-year-old developed PTSD from what he witnessed at the scene, because there were adults who were throwing up at the scene. My 4-year-old son at the time had a catastrophic brain injury, had to be airlifted to the nearest hospital 3 hours away and to undergo emergency brain surgery. And they didn't even know if he was going to live for the first month or so. And then even after that, we were told by one of the preeminent pediatric neurosurgeons in the world that he would never walk again, never talk again, never pass high school. That set me on a whole nother journey. First of all, why me? I did everything right. I was a meditation instructor. I was a doctor. I ate right. I exercised. I did yoga. I got as much sleep as a single mom with 2 young kids could. In other words, what else could I do? And what caused me to crash and burn? And what I realized is that there are what I'll call hidden factors. Think about an iceberg, right? And that tip of the iceberg you see, right? It's that submerged portion of the iceberg that is the darkest, most dangerous, potentially part of the iceberg. And as the Titanic found, much to its detriment, right? That submerged part is the biggest, the most dangerous part of it. And it's that submerged part of the iceberg that caused me to crash and burn, these factors that I had no idea about. And I was a doctor. So I realized that if it could happen to me, it could and was happening to hundreds of millions of people around the world. And I'm going to say billions now after the last few years of what we have been through, because I guarantee that if I did a Dutch test on everyone listening here, I would find that 99% of you were either in what's called high cortisol, which means that you're in high stress level, right? In other words, you're maybe in the marathon level where you're just, I'm a going. Is that saber-tooth tiger still behind me? Oh, I'm a going, right? Or you've possibly bottomed out, like I did, into adrenal exhaustion, where you've got nothing left to give physically, and possibly mentally or emotionally. And so I made a decision in my hospital bed one day, as I was bawling my eyes out, crying, why me, that I needed to do something about it. But first, I had to look after my 2 young children. And so my 6-year-old son's PTSD has led me on a path of learning how best to help people who have been traumatized, and especially children, because their brains aren't yet developed as adults are. And it led me on a path, because I refused to believe that prognosis that my youngest son would never walk, talk, or pass high school. Think about the mama bear. I was just like, that ain't happening on my watch. So I literally spent years looking for answers, searching for answers, went back to medical school so that I could be at a level, because I got sick and tired of people saying, it's okay, Mom, we're the experts. We know what's best for your son. And he's never going to talk again. No. As I said, don't tell me it's impossible. I absolutely categorically refuse to believe it. Fast forward 20 years, and my youngest son not only walks, talks, he has about 1 week left of his engineering degree at one of the best universities in the world for engineering. So, and I will say, he is actually literally missing about a good 20% of his brain. So that has made me passionate about the ability to heal, to self-heal, and the power of the mind, especially the subconscious mind, which is like our control center for everything in our body, including our vision. So that has led me to where I am today, talking to you. So as a medical doctor, as a chiropractor, as an acupuncturist, all of those, they sound great. And really, what sets me apart possibly is that I've been there. I've had the personal experience. So I understand how so many of you possibly, as you're listening to this, feel about it.
Wow, I mean, this is just, I don't even know what to say. I mean, your crash and burn story is really a crash and burn story, and not just, some of the stories where you just don't feel good for a few weeks. I mean, that's heartbreaking. I was just waiting for how does it end? How does it end? I mean, that's just, first of all, I mean, amazing what you and your two sons have accomplished and coming out of this tragic event. And so let's move on a little bit, because I think when I heard you right, you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned adrenal fatigue or exhaustion. You mentioned stress. You mentioned trauma. And it's funny, not funny really, but when I talk about vision, how we lose our vision or how vision often declines is, and I don't know so much, or I don't talk so much about adrenal exhaustion, but that idea of stress and trauma are definitely two factors that so many times are then one of the root causes where, either in childhood or young adulthood or in older age, we lose some ability to see, one way or the other, nearsighted, farsighted, astigmatism, all these kind of aspects. So tell us a little, I don't know, I think you have 3 different ways or 3 different aspects. So maybe we should go through them one by one and look a little bit at each one. And then what is the problem? And you already outlined quite a lot of them in your story. But then also, what is the strategy or tip that everybody listening can implement right away? So I don't know what order you want to go in or what they are exactly. So tell us maybe number one. What's your number one aspect of why we struggle so much with our health and our vision?
Thanks. So number one, I chose, and you could say it goes out of order, but this is to me, one of the biggest factors in causing conditions and also blocking our ability to heal. And whether that's vision or other chronic conditions like autoimmune conditions, when I see clients, they by the time they see me, they most often have more than just one thing going on. It just may be that one specific condition or challenge is their pain point that brings them to see me. So, and that's because I can guarantee that if it's impacting your vision, it's impacting your immune system, it's impacting your heart, it's impacting your muscles, it's impacting your ability to think straight, right, and be successful. So when I talk about this, I focus on trauma as the biggest version, so much so that I'm in the process of writing a book called Transcend Your Trauma and Own Your Superpower. And because trauma is so huge, and I take a bigger view to trauma than perhaps most do. So if you're sitting there going, well, this doesn't have anything to do with me, have you ever felt overwhelmed, powerless, out of control, like life's being done to you?
100%.
Right? I think we could all put up our hands and go, especially with lockdowns and everything, me too. Right? So trauma really is that where, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, because it can also be illness. Can we think of an illness that's been going around? It can be injury, right? Not only is the injury a trauma, but it actually traumatizes your whole system. So whether it's physical, mental, or emotional trauma, it literally becomes one of the biggest energy vampires that you have, that's operating in the background and you don't know, just like that submerged portion of the iceberg, right? Or if you want to think in concrete terms, it's like you're driving this high performance sports car, because what else is this beautiful body? And you may be putting in the best nutrition, the fuel, right? You may be taking care of all the different parts, but what if you got a leak in the fuel line? That fuel is not going to get to the engine where you need it, right? So that is how trauma can cause us, as I said, drain the life energy out of you so that you have, it sets you up for failure, whether it's in your health, including your vision, or in your happiness, your personal relationships, your career even. And I talk a lot about childhood trauma, and not everyone is like my 6-year-old son, who it was very obvious that it was PTSD like that, right? That was like one of those big T moments that trauma specialists like to talk about. However, it could be an abusive or neglectful childhood, which is what I realized was one of the biggest factors in my crash and burn, having an abusive childhood due to my father, as wonderful as he was, had PTSD from serving in the Congo, witnessing and experiencing atrocities that most people on the face of this earth have never experienced. And then at that time, it not being recognized. And, he's basically told, suck it up, take it like a man. And by the way, this is confidential and you're not allowed to talk to anyone. So he did what any good soldier does. He soldiered on and he self-medicated with drinking and took his anger out on his family. He was doing the best he could. But did that 5-year-old me know that? No. So the 5-year-old, that wounded inner child, and it doesn't even have to be trauma like mine. It could be trauma, like you might be saying, I had the best childhood ever. I had fantastic parents. I had the most amazing upbringing. And to a child who has no logic portion of their brain until they're at least 12, maybe mommy forgets to pick them up, or it gets delayed and isn't able to pick them up from nursery school or kindergarten, grade 1, on time. And those minutes feel like forever to little Johnny, right? And they may feel like everyone always abandons me. Right? This is how it works. When we go back to childhood trauma so much over and over and over again, and I've heard some people say to me, "Would you just give me a break with that childhood trauma nonsense? Like, just again, suck it up." Right? It happens to everyone. The reason why it has such a major, more impact than even as an adult is because at that age, as I said, we don't have the developed thinking cap, the logic, to be able to logic things away. So if mommy and daddy are fighting, maybe it's my fault. If mommy and daddy got separated, maybe there's something that I did to cause it. If I had been a good girl, or if I had been a good boy, that wouldn't have happened. Or maybe somebody got sick and I didn't feel like I could, my needs mattered because theirs were so much more important. Right? And the key thing is that trauma just doesn't heal on its own. So whether it's the little t trauma, which I hate little t, big T, because it makes it sound like one is more, needs more attention. They all need attention. And the problem is, after the last few years, we have felt like all we want to do is get back to our lives. Right? What was the first thing when lockdown ended? Just wanted to get together with your friends. Oh, hey, I can go traveling. I want to go traveling. I want to go lie on the beach. I want to do this. I'm going to do self-care. The challenge is that there's a difference between healing, truly healing, versus mending. Because if you sprain your ankle and it swells up, that's a trauma, physical trauma. If you don't get treatment for it, to help it heal properly, it will mend. The swelling will go down. You'll be able to start walking on it, but there's going to be scar tissue there. And the scar tissue is going to build up and build up and build up, which is why it's so important to heal properly from any and all trauma. And it all starts with awareness. I always say awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution. So the tool for this time is actually an awakening awareness. And what I want you to think about, if you have something to write down, perfect. Do it now. Or just think about it in your head and ask yourself, what may have happened? Maybe it's glasses I needed. Maybe I developed astigmatism. Maybe I, developed some other condition, whether it's far-sighted glasses, nearsighted glasses, right? Think about when that was first discovered and think back to like that year or two before, because probably it was getting worse and worse and worse before then you realized, your parents went, hang on, Johnny can't see the chalkboard now. I'm showing my age. They don't even have chalkboards now, do they?
I know.
I don't know.
So for me, I got diagnosed with farsightedness and squint. So I was turning in at age 3, and that's when I got glasses. And it's always hard because age 3 is so young, and I don't really remember, but I know that my sister was born a year into, and I love my sister. She's actually coming from Germany in an hour. Now I do, but back then, there was a sibling. My attention, my mom had no washing machine. She had cloth diapers. She literally had to boil the diapers in a big pot on the stove, working crazy. She was very unhappy about my sister being born. I know initially because she was already overwhelmed. So that happened. And then we moved. My dad designed and built our own house. So he was working crazy. He got his engineering degree. And anyway, so I feel like in hindsight, there was a lot of like changes happening to my little me. Even though I don't feel like they were bad. I love the new house. Now I love my sister, but it's, so for someone like me who doesn't exactly remember, like I know what happened, right? From my family, but I do not remember. Like, does that make a difference if we don't exactly remember, or can we just literally ask our parents or go back like me? All these things happened, right? As a kind of upsetting me in a way.
Absolutely. Great point, Claudia. And thank you so much for sharing. The thing about it is that look at the results around you. So you did like the right thing. Okay, this was the result, the strabismus, which normally shows up earlier if it's going to be just idiopathic, right? So the fact that it waited that long to show up for you, right, says something. And so what was happening in your life around? And you may not remember. Because of my abusive childhood, I had no memories before the age of 8. I can think of one memory. That was and it was a good memory. Everything else got washed away as a selective, protective mechanism. So you may not even remember the trauma. And I'll also say you may not even recognize that what you experienced was trauma. I didn't think about my childhood as abusive until I was working with trauma clients and listening to their stories. And I was going to them, like, mirroring back. Oh yeah, yep. And then I'd go back and go, hang on. Right. Because guess what? It was just the way it was.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just the way it was. I'm going to throw another couple layers in here for you all to think about. And that is, it doesn't even have to be personal trauma. It can be what's called intergenerational trauma, which is the trauma that your parents, your grandparents, basically anyone who raised you, right? What they suffered right? Because they're the ones who programmed you, in other words, raised you, right? They basically programmed their trauma responses into you, right? So again, it doesn't happen so much as a baby because everybody's like, oh, girl, a cute baby, right? It's like when the toddler starts getting into stuff, right? And you hear no for the first time and right. And the honeymoon phase is over of babyhood, right? That's when the programming begins, right? And I'm going to throw yet another layer onto it because research has shown there's something called epigenetic trauma is my term for it. And what that means is that your ancestors who experienced trauma, obviously before you were born, don't even have to have had contact with you. And it's literally changed how your DNA is expressed. Mm-hmm. And the fancy term is upregulating or downregulating genes. So can literally upregulate disease-causing genes and downregulate your good immune protective genes. They've shown that fear can be transmitted down. So even if you had vision problems right from the get-go, there's a good possibility that if you look back, and I really, truly encourage all of you to do this, I'll call it shift instead of exercise, because that's what we do when you work with me, right? Do this shift and think about it over and over and over again in those terms. What might I have experienced as a child, as a teenager, because let's face it, that's like a life onto its own. Early adulthood, in other words, what happened to me physically? What happened to me mentally, emotionally, right? What happened to my parents? What happened to my grandparents, my ancestors? Sometimes right? You can extrapolate and go, well, I'm of African American descent, and so that means that my ancestors went through slavery. You may be of Jewish descent and had ancestors who were in the Holocaust, or the Dutch famine in the Second World War, or in my case, I'm part Aboriginal, so my ancestors were forced marched along the Trail of Tears, and over half them died. So all of those factor in. It doesn't even have to be a big cultural or historical moment like that. It can be something like my mom, when she was 4 years old, was lost her mom. Her mom died as a result of childbirth. Her father was away looking for work. It was the Great Depression. And so my mom, within no time, went from having this big family with 7 older sisters and a mom and a dad who was away or whatever, to having nobody, and she was put in a foster home. So that is a trauma that they may not have even thought of as a trauma at the time, right? So that is my wish for you, for that, is to really focus on you're asking yourself those questions of how might this have impacted me? And if you don't know or appreciate how that might have contributed to your vision, I'm just going to say that your eyes are the mirror to your soul, right? And so much, as you've learned from Claudia and all of her amazing experts, so much shows up in the eyes, whether it's vision, like nearsightedness, farsightedness, astigmatism, strabismus, it might be cataracts, it might be glaucoma, it might be macular degeneration. I'm going to throw another one in there, diabetic retinopathy, right? Huge. One of the biggest complications of diabetes, which again is one of the biggest causes of mortality worldwide. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse, right? Everything shows up in the eye to the point where there's a discipline. I don't know if you ever had an iridologist, Claudia.
Yes, I did.
Right. So that shows up. So I don't need to talk about that.
Can I go to something really quick? Because what I hear a lot from traditional eye doctors is it's all genetics, the myopic, but I love what you said about the intergenerational trauma. And I mean, whose family didn't in some shape or form nowadays go through some kind of trauma, war, all this stuff. And we usually find like fear is related more to nearsightedness, and anger could be more related to farsightedness. And also the liver, obviously, in Chinese medicine is the anger, as far as I understand. So I think, yes, there could always be real genetic like genes, but I loved how you said how the epigenetic changes that happen over generations. So, but they make it sound like it's just bad genes. You're just bad luck versus, how much influence you have in your own life with your own lifestyle. And that's what I find so empowering, that it's actually changing our genetic coding. And I wish I would have known that quicker or sooner when my kids were little, but it's never too late to start. So I really love that you kind of backtrace this through the generations and what happened and how we can maybe find some of the things that we were born with or, that were genetic, really based on that kind of trauma response. So I think that's super, super interesting and powerful. There was one more thing I want to say. Oh, and then, and they always say, oh, my recent myopia increases. Yes, we've seen a huge increase from the 70s to now in myopia. And there is definitely a factor that is like the sunlight, not getting enough sunlight, the screens, the studying, the pressure to be in school, not being outdoors, all those things have, really accelerated that. But it's kind of like the only thing that most traditional doctors would even acknowledge is, contributing to vision decline, right? I mean, but that has definitely an impact. But that, I want to say one more thing. Dr. Bates studied this too. And back in I think I have some old books, I forgot, like 1920s or 30s, they developed these things for children, these metal rests, because they thought just looking up close is really destroying your vision. Like 100 years ago, literally 100 years ago, when we had school books and maybe poor lighting in school. And they found that just having the kids be like 16 inches, 40 centimeters away from the book versus closer didn't really make any difference in their vision, right? So yes, looking up close, we know that now for 10 hours or 14 hours a day is not helpful. However, that alone is never really the reason. And Bates even found that when the school teacher had glasses on, more children ended up in glasses. Now, the question is that because the school teacher has a certain personality and it kind of seems intellectual, like Harry Potter, right? Or is it that they just kids just copy parents' behavior? I mean, this is like a big question that we can't answer today. But anyway, I want you to move forward. So the first tip you gave was awareness, kind of like
awakening awareness around how trauma has.
So maybe journaling, like my mom is in her late 80s, and I feel like she, there's definitely that, memory fading. And I have to say, sometimes I wish I would have recorded my grandma telling us stories from World War, like all these things. And it's when we're little, we're like, oh, mom, grandma, it's the same old stories. It's boring. And now I'm actually recording. When I meet with my mom, I ask her all these stories that she remembers, because she remembers the old stories way better than what happened yesterday. And I just record everything because it's a great way, because otherwise, my grandparents, my dad, they're all gone. And, at some point, who do you ask if you're like our age, right? I mean, it's just a little, anyway, keep going. I love this. It's so interesting.
Thank you. And I know I spent a lot of time on trauma, and the seeds of the next two are in there. And I will say, you're right. This is a huge, huge topic. And I know I'm motoring through and giving a fire hose here. After talking with you, Claudia, we came up with, I'm doing a 5-day challenge next week. We're going to delve even more deeply into this. And again, don't feel overwhelmed, because I literally have whole courses I teach on this. So, and at the same time, I really truly believe that awakening awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution. So you have to awake to what needs to be changed. Kind of like you're wanting to clean a house and you lift the carpet to see the dirt underneath. You don't stand there for hours. It's not to get mired down and go, oh my God, look at the dirt in there, right? You just look to see, and then you put it back down. Same thing here. Right? Because I know that it can be a trigger for many people. And if it helps you, put it out on a reality TV screen, showing like a reality TV screen over here to your right, because looking to the right is looking to the past. And so put it out there and talk about it in third person. Like, oh, there's fear. Oh, there's anger. Oh, there's, right? Don't say I am, because that's owning it. Right. And that's where you're going to get mired down into the pain of the trauma. So step number 2, or the second way, is really it's part of the trauma, and that is survival mode. When you are in survival mode. And in fact, I'm going to say, even though we talk about acute stress kind of gets a bad rap. There's a reason why I said my upcoming book is called Transcend Trauma to Own Your Superpower. Because stress energy is neither good nor bad. I'm going to sound like very bad Shakespearean quote here. Stress is neither good nor bad, except thinking makes it so. In other words, it's your choice. You can choose to use your stress energy kind of like the Force. And I'm a real superhero geek from my 2 sons, right? So we've watched all the Star Wars. So you can either choose to use your stress energy like your superpower, like the Jedi, as a force for good. And it literally, truly can become your superpower. That story of a 98-pound woman who was able to pick a car up off her pinned child. I think that actually happened some point somewhere, or we just talk about it. The point is, you couldn't pay that woman to do it any other time. You couldn't give her millions of dollars and she wouldn't be able to do it. It's that that stress energy when you feel threatened or one of your loved ones feels threatened, right? Where you go into whatever your hardwired stress response, survival mode is. It might be what I call Hulk mode, where you got to go, 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 go. I got to make this right. I got to make this right. I got to make this right, right? Anger, right? Like the Hulk. Or maybe you're like Bruce Banner, where you're like, oh my God, how is this? I got to work this out. I'm worried. I don't know how this is going to, turn out badly. I need to come up with all the ways this is going to turn out badly for me and for my loved ones, right? In other words, the worrier. So, or maybe you check out going like, I'm out of here. And if you can't like physically leave, like every ounce of your being really just wants to get up and like take off, you check out mentally or emotionally. Or perhaps it's where you freeze, right, or faint. And that literally is like a possum, falls over and plays dead, right, in hopes that the bear won't notice them anymore and will leave, right? So those are, just like animals, we are hardwired for whatever stress response suits our physiology best. And so it's what keeps us alive in the moment. Right. And that's its whole job. As I said, it gets a bad rap, but its whole job is to keep us alive. Right. And so the challenge is that if you're not like an animal who either manages to get away or fight off their foe or, manages to come out of it alive, they'll literally like just shake it off. And about 20 minutes later, they're back to doing whatever they're doing. For us humans, what do? We like replay. And this is where trauma can come in, right? We're replaying all the bad things that happened, or what they said, or what your boss who just yelled at you, or the argument you had with your spouse, right? In other words, we're constantly like dwelling on the past and how everything went wrong. Or we're future pacing. We're worrying about the future and how things might go wrong in the future. Because again, after millennia of just surviving, we humans are hardwired for negativity and pessimism. So we tend to think about all the negative things that either happened or will happen. So unlike animals, we're not living in the moment. We're constantly like looking for like the next threat, or dwelling on all, everything that happened to me, like as a victim, right? So the stress may have ended and we're perpetuating it. We're perpetuating it over and over and over again. So we are literally keeping ourselves in survival mode. And why is that a bad thing, especially for your vision? Because your prefrontal cortex, which I call your executive rock star team, your thinking brain, your thinking cap, right, is one of those parts of your brain that gets knocked offline in survival mode, because that's not the time to think about, let me think about this. Should I run away or should I fight? So sorry, I just had a squirrel moment myself. I have to learn not to get to chat.
We have a lot of questions also on YouTube,
right.
but yeah, I agree. Yeah. When you're in mode, you're
right.
just freezing.
Right.
I freeze sometimes, you're just like, Yeah.
Yeah. So that frontal mode is also, that's your logic brain. It's what allows you to make good decisions, and it gives you it galvanizes you into action. Like when you make a decision, okay, it's time to act, and it inhibits those emotions that are going to get in the way, right? Your thinking brain does all that, but it's offline. So you're in like perpetual survival mode. The other part of the frontal mind lobe, can't speak, is because it's also important in the processing of vision. So you've heard that phrase, out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely.
It's actually out of mind, out of sight. Right? Have you ever been stressed and upset, and you're late for like a very important meeting, and you've lost your keys and you can't find them anywhere, and you're like, you've looked everywhere, and somebody comes along and says, "Oh, you mean these?" And they're like right in front of you.
Right. Totally.
Right. So literally, fear, trauma, survival mode causes blind spots, including in your vision. Right. So literally, survival mode can throw you into this place where you are blind. Right. So of course you're not going to be able to see, because remember I said your vision, your eyes are a mirror to the soul. Your amygdala, which is like your 5-alarm survival mode, like danger, 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 Will Robinson. Right. And it's like, wow, 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 wow. That's your emotion center, your survival mode center. Have you ever heard the phrase, "I saw red"?
Oh, yes.
Or worse than that, "I saw black"? Like, in other words, my vision just blacked out and I just went into Hulk mode, right? That's your amygdala, right? So your amygdala, your survival emotion center, is involved in your vision, in your vision. Your hippocampus, which sits right beside your amygdala in your subconscious brain, your primitive brain, is your memory center. Have you ever heard of somebody getting amnesia after trauma, or going blind after trauma? Right? That's your hippocampus that's involved there. So they always say, okay, your occipital lobe, back of your head, is involved in vision. They might give like a nod to your parietal, your temporal lobe, but they don't talk about these other areas that are really your subconscious mind, which is why I am so passionate about healing at the subconscious level. Your limbic system. So you've got your amygdala, you've got your hippocampus, your limbic system wraps around it. And your limbic system is what controls, basically, it's like the little man, the keyboard behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. Like, in other words, your limbic system controls everything. And it's also where pain is produced. But this is where you can get conversion syndrome, where you literally can't see, right? Psychological blindness. And finally,
sorry. And then you go to the doctor and they give you glasses, which then actually manifests. And that's, I think, happens a lot when children get glasses. So we have to I know this is so fascinating, but we also run out of time. And I do want to cover one tip for this. And is there one last thing you wanted to say? I didn't want to cut you off, but is there one last thing about the brain that you wanted to say? And then we want that tip, like what can people do when they're in that acute stress mode?
All right. So if you want, there's way more to the brain, and I apologize for going over, which is why I created that 5-day challenge that's starting on Monday, April 17th. For those of you who are listening to the replay, it will be recorded, like it'll be evergreen. It's just, if you want to, and it's free. It's completely free. So if you want to take part live, join April 17th. Otherwise, you'll be able to catch the replay. But all of this is going to do a deep dive even more into it. So
I'm putting it in the chat, so on YouTube as well. April 17th, is that name to this, what it's called?
Sorry?
What is the name of the challenge? I put the link into the chat already on YouTube and on Zoom.
It's the 5-day healing shift challenge.
Oh, got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for doing that. I want to help as many people as possible start healing and feeling better, including with their vision. So one quick tip, because I'm all about what can you do in 30 seconds? What can you do in a minute? And so everybody with me, and I once did this to a whole big room at a conference. It was a brain injury conference that I was speaking at, and I had all of them do this with me. You ready? Take a deep breath in. And whether you're a singer or not, just go, oh.
I've muted myself, so it wasn't too loud.
Oh, I wanted to hear you, Claudia. Come on. So the beauty of this is that it is so simple. So you can do that maybe 3 times. So 3 deep breaths and sing it out. So exhaling for a long time is great. Singing it out, humming it out is even better. Why? And I know, Claudia, you do so much of this in your vision improvement. And this is one of my favorite ways, is because your vagus nerve, which is your rest and digest biggest nerve in your body, innervates your vocal cords. So by you doing that, you're not only getting the benefit of the deep exhale, the long exhale, and you're also sending the message to your brain, oh, she's singing. I must be relaxing. Okay. And to add to it, just really, really quickly, because this takes no time at all, the extra smile is never crowded. In other words, by smiling, you're sending the message to the brain that, oh, he or she must be happy. I'm going to release more oxytocin. I'm going to release more serotonin, your brain's and body's happy hormones. Okay, neurotransmitters, sorry. So smile and sing.
I love I'm not a good singer, but that's why I also find Om at the end of yoga practice, that humming, or it's like, I love that. That's super simple, right? What about just sighing it out? Is humming better? Because sometimes I just go like, like almost screaming it out and everything is too much. Is that the same? Or is humming better?
So sighing is similar to breathing it out, which is very good. And the humming, especially like when you're doing it in the lowest tone one of the lowest tones you can do, right? Your vocal cords are a little like,
okay.
Think about like a bass string on a bass, right?
Yeah,
compared to a violin, like.
Okay, great.
There is an emotional, just like certain swear words, there's an emotional satisfaction of screaming. I'm going to say that. Okay. So why don't you mix it up? Just mix it up. So the final one, because I know that we need to get going here, please join the challenge, the 5-day challenge. I created it for you guys. Others are going to join because once I've built it, I might as well, allow as many people as possible. So the Healing Shift Challenge is for vision, it's for autoimmune, it's for severe pain, it's for anyone who's been dealing with a lot and they don't know where to turn. It's a perfect place for them. So please invite your family and friends as well to that. And so that you can all benefit. The final one is that if you've been running too long on your stress energy, right, you end up like emptying your gas tank and you got nothing left. That is adrenal exhaustion. That is adrenal exhaustion. That's where I was. That's where I was 20 years ago when I hit the wall, which is why I want so much more for you. I really, truly do. I want, and why I created that 5-day challenge and why I've created all the programs that I have to help as many people as possible avoid what my family and I did. That has become my mission in life ever since we almost died. Because if you've reached adrenal exhaustion, I want to help guide you back if you're ready. If you're on that slippery slope, I'm there to help you if you're ready. And so adrenal exhaustion, what can it look like? So really quickly, It may look like chronic worry, overwhelm, anxiety, like you're unsure of what path to take. You're afraid of making the wrong decision or doing the wrong thing. Like, in other words, you're just paralyzed in you think you're like spending all this energy in doing something, but really you're just like on a hamster wheel. Or you're festering in resentment or anger, and it's not fair, right? Or maybe it's fear, scarcity, insecurity, like there's never enough, right? Or maybe you're to the point of feeling hopelessness and despair, like a crushing weight or burden that's just become too much, like everything's coming all at you all at once and you can't dodge it fast enough. Or it may feel like that nightmare that keeps you awake at night. Or it might feel like grief, sadness, loss, loneliness, right? And all of these are where you've just gone, I haven't got anything left to give. I haven't got anything left to give. And interestingly, or ironically, they happen to belong to what in Chinese medicine are meridians that all end or start at the eyes. The eyes really, truly are a mirror to the soul. So one of the things that I teach is acupressure. If you've heard of EFT or tapping, it's kind of like that, and it's coming at it from the acupuncture standpoint. So I'm going to show you the points, and then go back and watch this again and learn, and take 3 deep breaths at each point to start.
Okay.
So
I'm going to hide my video so that we see you full screen. So, okay. Show. Yeah.
Okay. So the first, it's not just 1 point, it's 3 points. Taking your 3 fingers and going from the inside of one eyebrow, in the middle, and across. So 3 fingers, 3 deep breaths. The reason you do this, I can't like talk to you and hold it there at the same time. So here, inside of the eyebrow, middle of the eyebrow. So this is bladder meridian, yin tang calms down the whole nervous system, and that's the other bladder meridian. So this is for overwhelm, anxiety, just that worried about, what's the next step. Okay. So 3 deep breaths at each of these points. Follow your eyebrow out to the outside edge of your eyebrow. And this is your triple heater meridian. This is hopelessness and despair. Okay. I'm going to go back here really quickly and say the positive emotion, for those of you who don't like talking about negative, for the 3 fingers in the middle, is feeling peaceful, harmonious, and balanced. Outside of the eyebrow, the triple heater meridian, hopelessness and despair, that's feeling lighthearted and optimistic. Okay. Sliding your finger down to the side on the bone, don't poke yourself in the eye, side of the bone of the eye. This is the beginning of the gallbladder meridian. And just like with liver, it is about resentment, anger, rage, wrath, fury. Okay. In the positive, it is forgiving yourself, because we're often hardest on ourselves and angry at ourselves inside, and others, right? Understanding, for those of you who say, I can't forgive that person, forgiveness is for you. Right? It's releasing that anger, rage, and resentment so that it can't harm you. Coming down on the cheekbone, just underneath the pupil of the eye, is the stomach meridian. This is fear. This is fear of not enough. So scarcity, insecurity, right? In the positive, it is feeling content, feeling fulfilled, feeling abundant, right? And I'm going to pull in one here at the front of the ear. There are 3 points that come down. And the one right in the middle, if you look at that triangle of the ear, can you see? There's like the triangle. It's called the tragus of the ear. If you come like right to where your jaw is, if you open your jaw, there's a space there. That's the small intestine meridian. And that is that grief, loss, sadness, loneliness. So you can see by having done all of these points, you've circled the eye, and the ear is actually connected with the eye. So it's not surprising that that is part of it. So go back, do those points, 3 deep breaths. In fact, do what I just said in the last tip, which is ohm it out. Okay, so all right, you don't even have to say the words because you're vibrating them anyway. Okay, so there's the 3rd tip. And as I said, go back, watch this recording multiple times and write down those points. Join our challenge so that you can learn more of those tips and I can delve even more deeply into it. And I'll look forward to seeing you all hopefully there.
Well, thank you so much. This was amazing. I just want to really quickly go, and then we will put all the links into the show notes. So it was the awareness, what was it? Awakening awareness, like what happened, like really maybe even ask other people in the family or friends, if you don't, sometimes that helps. And then the second one was the deep breath in, and then that kind of humming it out, or, that kind of low vibration. And then the last one were these points. And I love, just holding them for 3
Yeah,
deep
you don't
breaths.
have to tap them like this. You can just hold them like for acupressure.
Okay, great. I love the positive piece. I don't think you mentioned the positive one in front of the ear, but it's the opposite of the grief and all the things that you said. I'm sure it's hope and
yeah, it's hope and feeling fulfilled, feeling whole.
Wonderful. I love this. So, and if you join Dr. Irene live next, I think it's let me look at my calendar, next Monday. And if you can't do it then, it will be recorded and you can join it another time. You can watch the replay. So thank you so much. I just want to look really, really quick. I know we are like over time, but I do want to look. So lots of comments on YouTube about what happened in people's lives, so that was definitely resonating. There was a question about so the right side was the past, and the left, correct? Is that matter if you're right or left-handed, or is it in Chinese? It's always the right is the past, and then the left is the future. Is that right?
Right. So looking to the left is to the future, and then moving it to the right is to the past.
Interesting.
And that actually has to do with I'll talk about it next week in the challenge. There's something that Mind Valley does. Vishen Lakhiani talks about it's mind control, but it's in a good way. It's controlling your mind, not controlling other people's minds. But they talk about that, how in hypnotism, like self-hypnotism, you're literally like moving it over to the right, go to the past. Like, okay, I'm done with that.
That makes total sense. There was, I don't know, are you clearly not an eye doctor? There was a question about keratoconus, which is when the cornea kind of grows from a dome shape to more like a cone shape. Any thoughts on that? I mean, I don't expect you to know this kind of stuff because it's obviously not, you're not an eye doctor, and there's all these different eye diseases that I even haven't. I mean, I know keratoconus, but any thoughts on what could potentially be resonating with that in terms of trauma, adrenal fatigue, and the, what was it called? The acute stress? Probably not, huh?
Question. And what comes to mind is that one of the ways that we weather the storm, right, to become strong, is we build a barrier around ourselves, right? And in other words, when we feel like we need to be strong against the world, like we're in that cone of silence, or we've built like the fortress, and that can, maybe in the moment make us strong, but where is it making us inflexible?
Oh yeah, right? That makes so much sense.
Right. And think about like presbyopia, lack of flexibility, right, in the lens. And so I'm throwing it out there that it seems to me that whether it's the whole cause or not, I would be very interested to know if, what trauma has been suffered, and how that brilliant child or person survived it, and it just may not be serving them anymore.
I love that. And from what I understand, keratoconus is 100% what you said in a way. also that like being out there, right? Because it's pushing forward. It's that like being out there, getting things done, being productive. And that could come from like the trauma of not feeling good enough or being told in so many words, and I think a lot of us can probably resonate to that. And it doesn't always mean that everybody ends up with the same vision conditions, even just because there is a correlation. Like, I always mix that up, correlation, but the idea is that there is some kind of overlap. Doesn't mean everybody who has fear in childhood is becoming myopic, or everybody that's angry is farsighted, but yeah, there is that kind of tendency of like, always pushing, always sharpening the pencil, it's always like ready for action. So I think that makes 100% sense of what you said. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And do you have a little bit extra time for our Clear Vision Club peeps on Zoom, or okay, great. So YouTube, goodbye. We see you next week, and I hope this was helpful. Join her 5-day challenge. It's completely free. And I will also put that you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram, you're on all the social media channels. We will put all that into the description so that you can follow Dr. Irene, and then, take a 5-day challenge. Thank you so much. Any last final words that you want to share with YouTube before we hop off here?
Just join the challenge. Join the challenge so you can learn more and start feeling better now.
That's a great point. And because you do it live the first time, I love to do these things when they're live, because